All right. Well, hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jessica Kelly. I am the founder and CEO of Threefold. Threefold is a SaaS platform providing apparel brands with access to an ethical supply chain and training so they can grow their business for people, planet, and profit. Before I get into how that works, I want to take you back to 2013. I had been working for a few years in the fashion industry in New York City already, and had loved what I was doing, but really started to feel a disconnect between my work and a deeper meaning and impact that was having. That same year, a massive factory collapsed in Dhaka, Bangladesh, killing over 1,100 people in one day. And it awoken the world to the issues hidden in fashion supply chain, and people started demanding change. And I began my own journey of figuring out how I could use fashion to create sustainable, safe employment for people around the world. And I started to learn a couple things. First, fashion is the largest labored industry in the world, and 97% of apparel sold in the US is actually made in developing nations where these jobs matter most. As I went along this journey, it sent me over to India for a research and development trip with this idea that I had. And I encountered incredible factories, both small scale and large scale, that were doing things like employing women rescued out of sex trafficking, providing daycare for employees' children, and having machines that dye denim with one glass of water. So these excellent factories did exist, but all of their websites were terrible, making it pretty obvious that it's really hard to find good factories. Now, the best thing about what we're actually doing is even if you don't care about your brand standards as a production team, sourcing is actually a constant pain. So you are dealing with finding factories on a continual basis. You may not know that, but brands are actually always looking for new factories, and they don't have great options to find them. They're asking colleagues, they're searching their inbox. Once they do find a factory, they have to actually start sampling. And with $642 billion of goods returned every year, this is a huge liability for brands to figure out that price and quality fit. And they spend up to 6 months and $10,000 twice a year getting this to work. So how we work as our platform is we begin by vetting factories based on their ethical certifications that they have in place. Now, as a brand, you can be an Eileen Fisher, Outland Denim, you're a production team, and you come in, you can see all of our factories on the database. You can filter by the production that you're actually looking for. And you can learn more about the factory, the standards they had that allowed them to be accepted onto the platform, any more information you might be looking for. You can message the factory directly to get more information, and you can share your project to get a price quote and compare pricing with other factories. Now on the dashboard, all of your production lives in one place. You can see how far along you are in your production, if you're missing any deadlines, and you can also see a bird's eye view to stay on track and not let anything fall through the cracks, which is often a problem as well in production. So we have been working on this and gaining some traction that we're excited about. We have built that MVP you just saw for 10,000 with a team in Bangladesh. We've had 80 factories apply and 10 brands purchase the early membership to the platform. And we're starting to hit some revenue and build, and we're getting some big brands that are starting to be interested in what we're doing, but we obviously need better tech, more of a team to be able to build that out. As we move forward, we do have a great team in place. I myself bring 10 years of experience in New York in the fashion industry, working with hundreds of brands, helping them grow in marketing, sales, and PR, and have been on the ground finding those factories firsthand. And Megan, who just joined our team, is bringing 10 years of experience in production and design from New York and Hong Kong. So she has a firsthand understanding of both our brand and our factory consumer, which has helped us really create a great strategy. Our board of advisors has a wealth of experience in their own right, from 10 to 20 years of experience with notable brands as well. So between our network, we're super connected to the customers, to where we can grow and actually also build a team. Now we're a two-sided marketplace, so our revenue comes from annual brand memberships as well as the commission we charge factories on new business that comes their way. And we've been able to utilize our training, which is a la carte revenue, this past year to grow in a year when a lot of the production was shut down and very unstable. So as we move forward, we're really focusing on that platform revenue and growth, and it's getting us up to 20 million in revenue with a really healthy 80% profit margin. This is in addition to keeping that Bangladesh team so that we can keep some of those tech costs lower, and then focusing a lot on that platform revenue as we really grow forward. So We are currently working on a 500,000 pre-seed round at the moment, and would love for anyone interested to join us. And that is so that we can increase the UX, UI, and the capability and offering we have in our platform, as well as really prove out that pricing and product fit for our customer. Early conversations are showing we can actually charge a lot more, and so we're excited about that learning, and start to build that early traction so that we can then move forward and get a team and continue to scale up. The opportunity here to provide jobs for people around the world is extremely significant. I've seen it firsthand, and I would love for you to join us in creating fashion industry for people, planet, and profit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And Steve and Dr. Williams, if you'd like to turn on your cameras. And Steve, you can go ahead and start this time.
Okay, great. Well, good pitch. I always love some storytelling, especially something that's got some meaning. So good on you for seeing that that issue. There's lots of those issues, not just in the apparel supply chain, but in everybody's supply chains, unfortunately. So so I like that. I think it appeals well. I think timing is good for things like that. I would say that generally the pitch flow is good. There's a few things that I would point out. One is, you know, the software side of this is in my wheelhouse a little bit. So I've spent my life in software engineering, and I would like to see a little bit more on the platform and the technology. If you have one of your founding members or an early employee who has experience technically in these areas, I'd like to put that forward as well too. And I'll tell you the reason why. The platform that is kind of described here, I can see it to be important and valuable for sure. It's very wide in terms of class of software. When you look at, you know, vetting and the information that's necessary to be able to vet these places, and so you've got kind of a mini publishing platform. Then you look at, you know, being able to upload a project. You've got, you know, speccing kind of capability. You've got the beginnings of a marketplace, because the other side can then turn and quote and bid that. And then you've got the project management or production class of software, which is to manage a project. And an apparel project, those, you know, details are substantial, managing them offshore. I don't know how often these outsourced third-party supply chain people are used to being in and out of systems at a level where that kind of project management software can yield really meaningful kind of production, you know, status and information for producers. So my question is just, you know, or my thought is, if we're going to have a really wide platform like that kind of traverses multiple classes of software, I'd want more technical detail in the pitch. I also think, for what it's worth, which I would characterize as not much, but I'll give it a shot anyways. There's so much value in the vetting, the being able to post a project and get a quote in the marketplace side of that. I just wonder about the necessity of all the time and effort and engineering that might go into managing projects, because again, that's a very complicated class of software and gets very sophisticated very quickly. And there's lots of people that just do that. All they do is software platforms for supply chains and even apparel, specifically to manage apparel projects. So I just wonder if there isn't there's so much value proposition in the first half, if the rest of it is really necessary. That's obviously a very big question. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. That's the thinking I have, because I've seen it many times. I'm in 4 or 5 deals right now, early stage software deals, and they all are running, you know, somewhere in between 5 and 10 times as expensive to build the software as the entrepreneurs originally estimate. So the wider, the harder, the more complicated, the more competition, the more expensive, the narrower, you know, the simpler, you know, the quicker to market, and potentially the more success you can have on execution and UI and all the hard parts of software. So anyways, my thought. I like the pitch, good flow, a little bit more technical would be great. I think the value proposition is fantastic. So
thank you.
Dr. Shante,
did I use all 8 minutes, Shante? Sorry.
She is, yeah, she's there. She goes.
There we go.
Okay.
I was on mute.
There you go.
I was talking away, actually, but I will echo all of the things that Steve said in a non-technical voice in 2 ways. One, I would say I would love to see a mini demo, because unlike Steve, I don't have that deep technical software development bench. And so in my head, it's very hard for me to translate what we see like right now on the screen to something that's really dynamic and moves around. So I'm one of those investors that always likes to see some kind of demo or some sort of walkthrough so that it doesn't feel flat to me. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, it's always 10, 20, 1,000 times more expensive than everybody thinks. And then there are clearly some potential pitfalls for developing offshore the longer you're in business. But I do have a question about wrapping up all of these certifications into something that maybe one day looks like, you know, the gold seal of approval. Is that something that you may be considering so that if a factory, for example, checked all the boxes, it's very easy to spot those factories? Or are you saying everybody in your database has all of these practices and are already certified and they're ready to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. So we are beginning with ethical certifications, specifically these 6, because this is the best we have on the industry right at this moment. The certification process is flawed. There are cracks in it. These 6 certifications require an outside auditing body. So someone has personally gone in the factory twice a year and is checking. It's not a self-audit, which there are certifications out there that do that. We absolutely want to create a bridge in the future as we move forward with that. I think that there's a lot of great factories I've spoken with who can afford the $2,000 certification that seem like they're wonderful operations. But I think that there's some work to and some creative thinking to be done there around how we can use technology to use transparency and polling of staff members. And I think there's some overlap opportunities there where we can bring other factories onto the platform that aren't currently certified, as well as create continued transparency even with the certified factories. So I think in the future, some of that work will involve working with local governments and nonprofits to get some of that movement off the ground. But for the time being, this was not a place we needed to reinvent the wheels. So we're starting with what the industry had to begin with.
Agreed. So no, I like that. I think from choosing a vendor standpoint, I always like, the ones at the top are not just the ones that paid more to be listed, but literally those are the ones that check literally all the boxes. And there's an easy visual standout for me to know they have all of these things. Mm-hmm. I would ask, it's kind of maybe a crummy question, but at least US centric consumer patterns tend to favor cheap stuff because they want to pay a lower price point. How do you convince the factories or the vendors who are sending these things out to these production facilities to maybe absorb a little higher cost because they are paying for, more expensive labor or something like that? Is there a real market niche where you can say, hey, yes, their production costs a little more and it maybe doesn't pass on to the end user, or end users or consumers are willing to absorb that cost?
Yeah, so there's actually a bit of a difference between what I would consider ethical labor versus ethical fashion versus sustainable fashion. So you're going to see a lot more of that price increase with sustainability because fabric is actually the most expensive part of the garment. And then anything else you do with that, naturally dyeing it, things like that, is going to make it even more expensive. One of the factories I was in India is an H&M, Target, Kohl's factory. So I've seen excellent ethical labor happening at these big brand factories. So it is possible at scale. I feel like that's where it's really going to vary, and sustainability is such a sliding scale that's where that depends. And I mean, I'm from Charlotte. I know that we're never going to hit a day where people stop shopping at Old Navy. That is their budget. And so I want to make sure that we have a 100% ethically made fashion industry. I don't think anyone should be enslaved for the clothes that we wear. And I think that that's entirely possible.
Yeah, I have to say one thing. Sorry, Shante. The broker community is huge in this transaction. Is there any, or maybe offline in the chat room we can talk, but I'm curious, my little bit of experience in apparel development, suggested that you can both have an incredible experience and be absolutely have a criminal experience with the broker community that's on the ground in these countries. Is there any possibility of extending your network to also vetting the broker community? Because a lot of the small brands, not the big brands that are going to send people and staff it themselves, but the small brands can't afford to have people on the ground in these countries to oversee production. And so I wonder about where brokers sit in it.
Yeah, there's definitely possibility for that. Basically, what I see with this platform is it's the beginning stages of what we're creating with an ethical fashion ecosystem. So the most obvious place we can expand to more immediately would be into material sourcing and packaging. So we're starting to do even more of that brand's supply chain. But there's a lot of intersections that come with production. And so whether that's brokers, whether that's talent, there's a lot of opportunities there. But yeah, I think we're creating an opportunity where kind of the travel industry had a travel agent and now you just go to Airbnb and book it yourself. This is where brands can have direct access to an entire database of whatever they might want to make, instead of having to find the right person and like look for jobbers and figure out who can find the right person, and they're all limited in their connections. So I think there's opportunity for that as a leg, but it's bypassing and creating a lot more just immediate availability.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.